Well, howdy, folks. Welcome to Ludicrous Feed Live. You're with Tom, your host tonight, and have we got a bumper show lined up for you today, including a very special guest, of course, from Fully Charged, on the back of Fully Charged Live in Sydney 2 weekends ago. So very much excited to introduce our guests a bit later on today. But to start with, let's introduce our regular guests, who are, of course, Mr. Riz Akhtar and also Mr. Rahul Prasad. Hello, gentlemen. How are we both doing?
Yeah, going well, Tom. Good to see you, Rahul, and everyone here.
Evening, everyone. We made it through the thunderstorms this morning that began the day in Melbourne, but turned out to be a cracking afternoon. Glad to be here and looking forward to having our special guest that we saw a couple of weeks ago at Fully Charged Live. I won't give it away, Tom.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you, Riz. Thank you for joining us as always. And of course, tonight's special guest. Sorry, gents. One sec. Here we go. Yeah, so tonight's special guest is, of course, very much related to tonight's topic, which is electric vehicles from China. Are they the key to cheaper cars in Australia? Today is the 23rd of March, 2023. And without further ado, let's introduce our guest tonight, who is, of course, the one only Mr. Elliot Richards from Fully Charged. Hello, Elliot. How are you?
Hello, Tom. I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be here. Just 2 weeks after Fully Charged Live, so very happy.
We're very happy to have you on, actually. So thank you so much for taking your time out from your busy schedule to be with us. For those who don't know Elliot, he is the East Asia correspondent for Fully Charged show. So I might let Elliot introduce himself and basically find out why he's in China. Take it away, Elliot.
Long story, but I'll try and make it short. So, yeah, I mean, I actually got my degree in architecture in about 2008 when the last recession hit. And obviously, junior architects couldn't get jobs. So I thought, I'll go out to China, see if I can get some work. You know, it's booming just after the Olympics. Original intention was to be here for 3 months. And here I am almost 15 years later. And I'm not an architect anymore. So that's why I'm kind of here. And that's how I've ended up in Shanghai for such a long time.
I guess that leads to my next question. How does an architect get involved in electric vehicles in China?
Yeah, very good question. I've always been interested in cars. I mean, I'm sure you guys used to watch the old Top Gears from the UK, you know, classic Clarkson, May and Hammond. You know, obviously, it was everyone's dream to do that. I thought, you know, it's just a dream, sort of always going to remain that. And then back in 2017, 2018, I started seeing all these electric cars on the road in Shanghai. And I thought, hang on, there's all these models that I've never even heard of. So I went on YouTube. No one was talking about it. I was like, that's weird. So I thought, I'll make some videos myself. So I made my own very small channel called China Driver. It's still there. And then started getting a bit more traction. And then I bought my own car, my Xpeng, my Xpeng, my G3. 2019, and just after that, basically COVID hit, and so I emailed Robert and Dan at Fully Charged and said, "Hey, you guys are locked down. I can still make videos. How about we work together?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." And then that's kind of how I've ended up in the position I am now. So it's an amazing journey, and I'm very lucky, and I love driving electric cars.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, you know, I read today that like China, I think we're up to like 25% new energy vehicle uptake in China, in the major cities particularly. Does that translate across to everyday living? Like, do you see that many cars on the road now which are EVs? Absolutely.
In places like Shanghai, I now struggle to find a charger, and this is in a city where there's chargers everywhere. It's kind of gone full circle from, you know, not enough chargers to now there's so many chargers, but there's also so many electric cars. It's been very noticeable the past year, just how many EVs are on the road and how many of them are Teslas as well.
Yeah. Now, I think BYD is still the number one in China, from my understanding.
Yes, that's right.
Tesla's up there. And you said you drove a Xpeng yourself?
Yeah, I got the G3, which is their first model they brought out. So it's kind of this small SUV thing. It's a bit basic actually now. Now I look at it, it's not got much tech, but it's fine for me and my family, and it was not expensive.
Okay. I mean, we don't have Xpeng in Australia, obviously. Where does Xpeng sit? Is it a luxury brand? Is it a common, affordable brand? What is it?
I think Xpeng's confused about this as well themselves. I think at one point they wanted to see themselves as luxury. They got this new big SUV, the G9, like super. It's actually very nice, like decently priced. It's quite luxury, but the reality is they're not in that segment. They're not Neo, for example. So I think they're kind of very much in that middle, affordable tech kind of area, or Tesla competitor area. Because they've got some great looking cars. You guys have seen the P7, the saloon. I think that's it's an iconic piece of design. I think it looks fantastic and it hasn't aged at all. I just wish they would send it overseas quicker.
Yep. Now you've obviously been to Australia now because you were in Fully Charged, 2 weeks ago, and in fact we've got a few fans here. I see someone say, here we go. Ian overseas says Fully Charged in Sydney rocked, and Elliot was very much part of that. So yay! Yay, Fully Charged. I mean, you were in Sydney for a few days. Can you see the Xpeng working in Sydney, at least from what you saw?
Oh, absolutely. You guys are kind of very starved of electric cars, right? Your choice is less than 10, maybe. And I think, I think it would fit in really well. The P7 is very stylish, fit in very well in, Sydney. We were down by, Darling Harbour. Completely see it fitting in. I don't know if the tech side would be so interesting to you guys. I mean, what do you think? Do you think like all this voice recognition and controlling everything with your voice, is that interesting for Australians?
Riz, thoughts?
Yeah, the voice stuff is okay. Very few people use it in Teslas. What I do love about the Xpengs, especially the new ones from the videos that I've seen, is every time you change modes, it makes these awesome video gaming sound.
Yes.
And we need more cars with that level of personality in Australia.
Rahul, I mean, I think, we've obviously had some issues with some of the voice recognition stuff in the Teslas. They don't seem to recognize a lot of the Australian accents. I mean, Elliot, have you noticed that? Rahul, have you noticed that yourself? We'll go to you, Rahul, first.
Well, I don't understand why Tesla and some of these other car makers cannot have Australian accents. I mean, it's not Australia; it's just Australia. I mean, what's so hard about recognizing an Australian accent, right? No, but in all seriousness, look, it would be a really good, cool feature, and I think BYD obviously coming out with so much personality in the Atto 3 compared to the minimalist design of, say, Tesla, and also at that price point is obviously, targeting that audience, which is young, interested in electric cars, but also with a bit of personality. Would be great to have Xpeng Neo sort of come in. And Tom, I just want to quickly add for our viewers and Elliot and Riz as well, that the Xpeng P7 that Elliot just talked about looks very similar to the Lucid Air. Would you guys agree in its styling?
I'll try to find a picture. Sorry, Elliot, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't remember which one came first, the P7 or the Lucid. But Lucid is obviously very expensive, and the P7 is not very expensive. So I think you can probably get one for around about, you're going to hate us, but about 45,000 Australian dollars.
Why must you tease us?
That's how much we paid for like an MG ZS back in the day.
Yes.
Like, and even that's gone up to like 50,000 now.
Yeah, that's right. I do apologize for the beep that you guys are hearing. We'll just try and find out where that's coming from. We'll work that out in a second. But we've got some comments here for Elliot. Here we go. We've got Tazzy EV1 saying, I'm jealous of the choices that Elliot has in China for EV options. I'm loving that BYD has arrived, though. That's true. We're glad that's at least one brand here. And Gaffer is saying, Elliot, it annoys me when I see stuff in the UK, so I know there are right-hand drive available, yet we don't get them here in Australia. I mean, Elliot, you said to me in Sydney, this was the first time you were out of China in like 4 years since the pandemic. You obviously haven't been back to the UK in that time. So, I mean, from what you've seen from, I guess, YouTube and other content. What is it? How does it compare now? UK EVs versus China EVs? Is there more choice in China now than the UK?
Oh yes, so much more. I mean, there's, I could test a new EV every day for a year and still not run out because there's just so many. I mean, a lot of them are questionable and they're just jumping on the bandwagon. But yeah, I mean, and the right-hand drive thing is weird because, a lot of these companies are expanding in places like Thailand, right? Which is right-hand drive. I know that, the Great Wall Cat, whatever it's called, Funky Cat. Yeah. I mean, they're expanding there in a big way. I don't understand why it's taking so long to get down to Australia. Right-hand drive markets are important. And it's not just the UK and Australia, it's Japan, Thailand, Malaysia,
most of Southeast Asia. Yep.
Well, yeah, most of Southeast Asia. And, that's a huge market for them, but it's just very slow. And honestly, my feeling is that the expansion of these Chinese EV brands into Europe isn't going very well. I got that feeling over the past kind of few weeks. You don't really hear that much. You hear a few Neo are on the road, a few Xpeng are on the road, but not that much in a big way. The only one you hear about is BYD, who are just taking over the world. But yeah, it's a real shame because there's so much demand in your market. There's so many passionate people, and I actually spoke to the people at Xpeng today. I said, guys, everyone asked me about the Xpeng and the P7. They're desperate. They're like, oh, that's very interesting. I'm like, come on, just ship some over. So yeah.
Just ship one. I'm happy to drive it, Elliot, by the way. I'm happy to test it for Xpeng. So just bring it to Sydney.
I think the only car that Tom will drive is the Xpeng G9, which, Elliot, I saw that video that you did with the design team. What a car. A little bit of an upgrade from the G3.
Massive upgrade from the G3. It's very luxury. It's extremely fast, 3.9 seconds to 60 miles an hour. Ridiculous. It's a very nice car, but it's quite a big package. It looks great, big package. It's only got 5 seats. I'm just like, oh, it's another big SUV. It's a great product, but not for me. But yeah, is you, Tom? Are you more into that luxury kind of, arm out the window kind of driving?
Like, I'll test anything really. So yeah, send whatever you want, whatever you think is going to work in Australia. But in all seriousness, I think the SUV market is just is huge in Australia, particularly in the capital cities. We've got parents wanting big cars for their kids to shuttle them around. So I think big-ish SUV would definitely work. We're seeing the Kia the Kia EV9 released recently, as we know, and that's coming to Australia. So I think something similar to that would definitely work here. And that G9 looks pretty good. I'll try and get that up on the screen here for everyone, so we know what we're talking about. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. All right. So this is what it looks like, everyone. G9. Big SUV. Yeah. I mean, Elliot, I want to hear your thoughts on why you think it's so slow here. Is it, a lot of people are saying it's because we don't have set fuel efficiency standards yet. I know China's done a lot of work to try and encourage new energy vehicle uptake. Is that the number one reason we're not getting them here?
Sorry, my kid's kicking off in the background. I don't know. I think, obviously the priority up until this year has been the China market, which is why they've not expanded overseas. But I think as sales are beginning to slow in China, now they're looking at overseas markets. Now, obviously the tooling is for left-hand drive primarily. So that's why they're going to Europe first. They're not going to the US because of taxes. But, I think now that they're considering right-hand drive, there shouldn't be any barriers to entry. I just think it's these companies are losing money. Every car they sell, apart from BYD, only make, I can't remember, $2,000 US dollars a car. Tesla makes about 10,000. Whereas I think Neo and Xpeng are losing money every car. So, money's tight, development costs are high. They've got the shipping, they've got to build the service centers. And I think, maybe the issue is that, Australia's by itself, as an island, whereas Europe, you could have somewhere in Germany and you can go from the Netherlands, from Belgium, from France, I think that's why it's just a bit easier and why they're tackling that first. I think it will come, but I mean, you've got to wait for a few more years, and you've already been waiting for a long time already.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hearing too that the Chinese are actually starting to buy Chinese cars as well. I know in the past they were kind of looking for European cars, and now it's kind of that nationalism's coming back where they want Chinese cars because the build quality is improving. You've seen that firsthand for yourself too, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's so many stories out there of people who've gone from Mercedes or BMW SUVs to Neos or Li Autos, and they're just like this is built for me and what I like. I want karaoke, or I want all the screens in the front. I want it to be fitting for the apps that I use in everyday life. Whereas Mercedes and BMW design it from that German viewpoint, and so the tech is a little bit behind. They just can't keep up, and the development cycles in China are so fast. Within 18 months they'll change it. You can swap out the hardware. You can't really do that with a BMW or Mercedes without obviously spending a huge amount of money.
Yep. No, good points there. I'll put up some comments here from the crowd. So here we go. Ian overseas. Yeah, Tesla voice recognition is one of its weak points. I just use the iPhone for map directions and music activation. GR Pratt says, fully charged and seeing the MG4 literally next to the BYD Atto 3 actually changed my mind. Back to the Atto 3. Interesting. I went all the way to see the MG4 to then change my mind. Well, at least it was worth doing, right? And question from Douglas Leung. How long has China been having EVs? When did EVs really get adopted in China? I mean, Elliot earlier said that in 2018, that's when he got really interested, right? When you got your Xpeng, I think. So, yeah, I mean, that's, we know there's incentives in China, and we're seeing year-on-year growth as well.
Yeah, I think the EVs really started with BYD back in about 2013, 2014. They developed the E6, the taxi for Shenzhen. And it's kind of a test run. They had them on the road, but not many private individuals because there wasn't much charging. There were no incentives. And then I think it was about 2016, 2017, they offered incentives to get a free number plate for cities like Shanghai. So if you buy a gas car in Shanghai, you've got to pay about £10,000, I don't know, 15,000 American dollars, 20,000 Australian dollars, just for the number plate. And then you can't just buy it, you've got to go into a lottery and wait for it. And so it's like, well, what's the point? Whereas the electric cars are like, well, we'll give you the plate now for free. Like, oh, okay. So that's when it really started to kick off. And then I think the adoption rate has just skyrocketed from there because, Tesla built its factory. Teslas were everywhere. They're, good price, good quality, and a desirable product. So it just really ramped up in about 18, which is when I started making videos. And then all the local manufacturers came in and started dominating the market. So, yeah, it's happened very quickly.
Yeah, it just goes to show incentives help, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, is Tesla still the brand people want, or is it starting to shift to non-Tesla EVs now?
I would have said last year, 100%, Tesla was the brand that everyone wanted. Sales were rocketing up every month, even during lockdown and COVID. Sales were pretty good. I think this year the shine has been taken off slightly. There's no real new products, since the Model 3 was bought out, however many years ago it was, BYD's bought out 20 different new EVs. And so, Chinese consumers expect that faster turnaround. And I think with Tesla, I think they're seeing slowing sales. That's why they've reduced the price by $3,000 or $4,000 US dollars. And that's what's led to this massive price war, which means now you can get huge discounts off EVs. Second-hand prices are collapsing. And we are actually seeing China, is the answer to cheaper, electric cars, because it's a race to the bottom for some. But for the consumer, if you want an EV, now's the time, or in 6 months is the time to buy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in Australia, we've got a bit of a price discount with Tesla over the last six months, but not a huge amount compared to other markets like China, US, Europe. And I think that's it's just the lack of competition, right? Why should Tesla reduce their price? I mean, there's a huge backlog, not many options other than Tesla. There's more and more coming, but I think that's the problem. It's just not much competition at the moment. I'll just put up some more comments up here. P2N says, I wonder how much is due to the Australian design rules compliance requirements. Plus, until May, we had a pro-fossil fuel government. Yep, I guess change of government has helped for sure. And GWM Gaffer says, GWM is already selling ICE here. Get their EVs coming as well. So we've got the Aura Cat, as we said earlier. That's in Australia now, which is good. Okay, so... And Tassie EV1 says, I wonder if the issue is due to lack of emission standards in Australia, unlike other countries. Yeah, we said that. Why don't get as many options as we could? Yeah, for sure. I mean, Riz, I'll cut to you now. You obviously monitor the sales numbers in Australia. We're up to what, 7%, I think, last month, new EV uptakes?
Yeah, nearly 7% of all registered vehicles were and a pure battery electric vehicle. Now, Elliot's probably listened to this and said, hey, that's so 2013 here in China. But, that's what we've got at the moment. And yeah, it seems to be catching on. We hope we have a 10% month before the end of the year. I guess models like the MG4 and hopefully the BYD Dolphin will eventually swim its way down here. And even the Seal in larger numbers, I think that would definitely help get it up to that 10%.
Hopefully 10% this year, right? And I think I saw the BYD Dolphin standard range being launched in Thailand today. So, these cars are coming. We just hopefully they'll come to Australia. We're a long way to swim, as Elliot said, so that could be a problem as well. Okay, so what else have we got here? Any other comments?
Elliot, just a quick one on this price war that you've mentioned that's starting to happen, which let's just say Tesla initiated in China and all other markets as well. I see that the CAAM, the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, is basically begging everyone involved to stop this, whether it's media or the manufacturers themselves. Funnily enough, Tesla isn't part of this, the Chinese Automobile Manufacturers Association. So basically, Tesla's doing what Elon is sort of wants them to do to get more market share, and at the expense of the Chinese EV industry. What are you sort of seeing on the ground?
Oh, it changes so quickly day by day. I think, what Elon Musk, what Tesla's done is just absolutely kind of destroyed the market, really. And, everyone's chasing, the lowest prices and the biggest discounts. I don't know how it's going to end. What I do see is I think it's going to actually result in perhaps cheaper Teslas overseas, which is good for potentially you guys. So, demand is dropping in China, but they've got the factory here. They still need to produce a lot of cars to keep everyone happy, the investors happy. And so I think what they're going to do is start shipping them overseas in greater numbers, and even maybe reducing the prices overseas because they need to keep that volume up. So I think it's not only going to have a knock-on effect within the China market, but the overseas market as well. I think there's going to be a few casualties this year. I think there's going to be a few companies which are going to go under. Absolutely. They just can't keep up. It's going to be an interesting year.
Well, I didn't realize today, well, I probably did, but I reminded myself reading about Chinese EVs is that Tesla's the only company in China that doesn't have to basically partner with a Chinese company. I think the rest have to partner with a Chinese investment or something similar. So interesting there. And I don't know how Elon managed to wrangle that, but Elon being Elon.
Yeah, I don't know how he managed that either. It's pretty incredible because, companies like BMW, who've invested millions in huge factories over the years, have never been able to do it. But then Elon comes along, it's like, oh yeah, we'll have the first non-joint venture company. I think it's maybe to spur on kind of the economic development of that area where the factory is, the whole supply chain, innovation, training people to help their own industry long term. I think that's what it's all about.
Yep. Possibly do the dance he did on stage as well. That might have helped when he first launched Shanghai Gigafactory. That was quite
good. I think that was the key reason, actually.
Elliot Doug Lung saying, big fan of your show, by the way. So there you go. Many fans on watching today. And Carlos Yip says, as a Chinese just back from China, I have to say there are so many reasonably priced great EVs on Chinese roads. There is just not enough competition now in Australia. So there you go. First-hand account right there. Thanks, Carlos. Yeah. And Max the Greatest has reported that BYD has implemented a 4-day week and that inventories have increased in the last 2 weeks. There you go. Efficiency. So apart from Xpeng, Elliot, any other car companies from China that you think might be a good fit for us here?
Pretty much all of them. I mean, one of the ones which is really interesting is Geely. So Geely obviously own almost everyone. They're buying a new company every week. But they released a pickup or a ute. This luxury kind of lifestyle brand, which is becoming very popular in China. But it's obviously not for a Chinese market because no one drives pickups here or utes. They're banned from most cities. So you can't drive it in Hangzhou. You can't drive it in Shanghai. It's built in Hangzhou. You can't even drive it in the city. And it's the Radar, the new brand. That brand, I think 100% is for overseas market like Southeast Asia, number one, and number two, markets like Australia and New Zealand. This car, this ute, is definitely coming to the south. Now, I haven't heard that, but there's no way it's going to Europe. There's no way it's going to the US. So it's definitely built for your market. And this was very reasonably priced. As it says, 37,000 Australian dollars. And it was a really good, just all-round car. And it was really good at doing power slides and wheel spins as well. That wasn't on the video.
Yeah. I mean, look, China's got the same 3-point plug as well as Australia. So all that V2L stuff would translate very easily across to us. So I think you're right, Elliot. I think this would be perfect for our market. I mean, this could compete with the Ford Ranger, dare I say it, which is one of our most popular utes here in Australia. Yeah. Good point there.
I think some of the other ones which would fit good in Australia would be obviously the Neo, luxury SUVs with the battery swapping. Those are obviously incredible competitors to the German automakers. I think they'd be very popular. They're big and flashy and just great all-round cars, really. So I think Neo would be one to watch out for. And then there's a lot of the smaller brands as well. I think Great Wall will do well if they don't go too wild with their designs. You've probably seen some of the upcoming Lightning Cat, which looks like a Amera. One looks like an old Beetle. I mean, they're crazy, but I love it. It gives some really interesting, competitors. Yeah, the ET5, very, very, very good car, and very well priced.
Am I right in saying that there are some incentives in China for battery swapping cars as well?
Yes, if you buy your car from Neo and you select the battery swapping option, so you don't own the battery, it drops the price of the car by about $8,000 US, and then you have to pay about $1,200 per month to rent the battery, which is fine because then you could swap it for the 70 kilowatt hour, the 100 kilowatt hour, or soon to be released 150 kilowatt hour battery. Wow. So it's a really good model. So you can get this one for around about 50,000 Australian dollars. If you select the battery swapping option, it's got LiDAR, it's luxury inside, it's very fast, it looks good, it's got everything. So Neo is definitely one to look out for, and they're about to start developing their cheaper range of cars as well. So they've just built a new factory called Neo Park with a huge capacity to build a new kind of cheaper range of cars. So that's obviously for overseas expansion, hopefully Australia, but who knows?
I want to ask you about road trips, Elliot. So you think during our panel in Sydney, you were telling us about road trips you did in China, particularly in the cold. Tell us about the experiences you've had in China doing road trips.
Well, I mean, road trips are pretty easy. The roads are great. You know, they're basically all new. We've driven very, very far. So the last road trip we did was to the very far north of China, to a place called Mohe, which is on the border with Russia. It was minus 35 degrees, and we did that in an electric car. So NIO has built a charging network all the way up north, and that's the one we used to get up there. The car did fine. You know, battery range was reduced by about 50%, you know, at that temperature, and it took about twice as long to charge. So instead of an hour, it took 2 hours. But, you know, all in all, the car did very well. You know, in the snow, the freezing conditions, we left it outside overnight, no problems, you know, opening it, starting it. So, you know, great fun. And then I've done a lot of other road trips, you know, to the south, round into the mountains. It's beautiful. It's so nice. And you don't have to really worry about where chargers are, because there's so many, 1.8 million, I think I remember saying.
Wow.
So we're, you know, very lucky with the whole infrastructure here that you don't have to worry about where you're going to next charge.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, particularly if you've got a battery swap tech, you know, you could make road trips very easy here in Australia. So hopefully, as we got Doug Leung saying, when is NIO coming to Australia? Well, we'll get Elliot's help very soon, hopefully, on that topic.
I think most of these cars are aiming for 2025 entry to Australia. That's what I've read. So okay. I think that's what they're planning to do. So, you know, just hold on for another 2 years and you might get a few more.
2 more years. That's all, gents and ladies. 2 more years. Question from Tassie Evie, well, comment from Tassie Evie1. Awesome to see Elliot on the show tonight. Who was on stage with you at Fully Charged in the Mega Theatre? It wasn't the BYD rep, but was it GAC? I think it was Ion, actually, AION. Any ideas when they are coming to Australia? So yes, he corrects himself, not GAC, but Ion.
Yeah, so I did speak to him, Charles Lau, I think his name was. I can't remember if he told me off the record or not. Soon, very soon. Within the next year, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, and they've got that amazing car there.
Do they really have the scissor doors like that?
Yeah, so this car hasn't been released yet.
Right.
I think it will launch probably at the Shanghai Auto Show, which is next month. And it will have the scissor doors. The Xpeng P7 like special version has the scissor doors as well. What do you guys think about, you know, things like this, a new brand like Ion, you know, with scissor doors? Are people going to like this in Australia?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we'll ask the crowd in the audience here. Yeah, leave your comments there. I'll cut to Rahul. What do you think, Rahul? A car like that, would that work here?
Yeah, great question, Elliot. Yeah, look, I think looking at what BYD's been able to achieve here in Australia with, you know, not really having a foothold in the EV industry in such a small space, in such a small amount of time. Yeah, I have no doubt that as long as it's stylish, it's cutting tech, and it's priced reasonably well compared to some of the competitors that I feel are outpricing themselves to the Australian nascent EV sort of growing market. Yeah, I have no doubts that Aeon will do really, really well here in Australia as well. And you know what, we like to have, especially with an EV, to have that feature which is unique to your EV. So obviously BYD with their tilting sort of screens from landscape to portrait, you know, with the guitar strings in the interior. Yeah, I think Aeon will do really well with the scissor doors, definitely.
Yeah. Do you think, because I always I've been to Australia before, and I remember seeing a lot of Ford Falcons, and is it Holden Commodores? Do you think like the Ion could tempt, you know, people who love those cars, drive those cars? You know, obviously they've got the massive V8s. You know, they sound, you know, amazing. Do you think something like that could tempt them away with, you know, scissor doors and speed? And what do you think?
I might cut to Riz on this question. He knows all the stats for those kind of car sales.
The Holden Commodores and the Ford Falcons that we've had, I mean, it's a unique group of people that were buying the big V8s, and, you know, they have the noise, and some of Some of the special ones are still sort of kept in pretty pristine conditions. It can fetch over $100,000 quite easily. Convincing them to buy something that's a bit futuristic, that's a little bit tough. But having said that, if something like let's say a bulkier BYD that is a little bit more tougher, like the new luxury brand that comes out with a SUV or a pickup truck that they've been testing, for the last couple of months, that may tempt them, because as long as it looks tough. So I think that's sort of the requirement when it comes to convincing those buyers to an electric vehicle. And as long as it also has some artificial V8 noise, that's part of the driving experience, they'll convince them.
Actually, speaking of artificial noise, I'm hearing people are booking their boombox retrofit for Model 3 and Y in Australia. So I've got Tony saying I booked a boombox retrofit at Chatswood. So if you want a boombox, yeah, apparently you can do it now in Australia. So there you go. Riz, I mean, what do you think about like this kind of car taking over like the Mustang? Because the Ford Falcon's no longer available here. The Mustang kind of is the only sedan from Ford. Could they be swayed?
And there's not much else available in this market. Even Kia had a larger sedan called the Stinger that was quite popular. But yeah, scissor doors on any car is a bit of a head turner. I know, I think Xpeng P7 has a scissor door version that I think, if we get those sort of vehicles here, then yeah, it's only a matter of time before people who like sports cars may want to consider one. Ford has, like I said, no plans for years to bring anything electric to Australia. So it's a bit of an opportunity for a lot of the Chinese brands making these sports cars.
Well, they missed out on the Ford Explorer EV, I think. That got launched, not coming to Australia. That's disappointing. Would have been right for this market. Oh, it's crazy. Elliot, any thoughts on sodium-ion batteries? Have you seen any of those in China?
Not yet, actually. We're trying to do a story on them with one of the companies who's developing them. So it's JAC, and they're the ones who actually build the Neo cars, and they do very affordable, practical, no frills electric cars. So I think sodium-ion batteries, they'll have a proof of concept this year, 100%, and I'd say probably you're looking at maybe next year for probably to begin manufacture. I think we're, battery tech here is almost there. I think that's going to be quite a significant game changer in terms of affordability of EVs as well, if they can produce it cheaper.
Yeah. Great comment from P2N. Ford may disappear from right-hand drive markets like GM did. I also read today that, GM is definitely losing market share in China from local brands too. So,
if you look at the sales figures, they're a disaster. I mean, for everyone apart from maybe BYD and Tesla, especially the legacy automakers, it's all, in the red, going down. They just can't compete anymore. They're too slow to innovate, too expensive. Like the Mercedes EQC, it's fabulously expensive here. And you think, well, why did I get that when I can get a Neo, which has all this technology? It's built for what I use every day. And yeah, it's too late.
Yep. You still there, Elliot?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. A little bit of interference there, but we're hearing you, I think. There's some comments on maintenance. I guess, obviously Tesla's kind of got that sorted out now, the last, 10 years they've been here. BYD's sorting that out now in Australia. I mean, what's the maintenance like of these EVs over where you are?
I've only taken my Xpeng in for a service, I think, twice. Very easy, in and out in a few hours. There's this, very nice kind of service center. Give you a cup of tea or whatever, green tea. It's, they're everywhere, especially in places like Shanghai. I live in a bit of a bubble where I think the rest of China is like Shanghai, but it's really not. Here we're very lucky. It's very easy to own, maintain an EV. You go further out, it gets a little bit more tricky, but the direction that things are going in is shifting from the coastline inland. So I think these service centers they're opening everywhere. Even brands like VW are doing a lot more. And actually, I think VW is one of the only brands legacy brands that's doing reasonably well here. So I think I wouldn't rule them out yet.
Question for you as well from Doug, and this is the one I wanted to ask you too. Obviously, with the Shanghai Motor Show coming up next month, first of all, how big is the Shanghai Motor Show? Like, what is it like? What is it on the world scale? It's got to be one of the biggest events.
I think it is the biggest in the world. I don't even know how. It's absolutely gargantuan. I think it's in the world's biggest exhibition center. It fills up 2 floors, and the floors are acres. Like, you can't even walk around it in 2 days. It's so big. Filming it is an absolute nightmare. So yeah, I mean, in terms of trends, what we're seeing now is diversifying away from SUVs. SUVs have dominated EVs for so long that they're starting to look at things like sports cars, exciting cars like the MG Cyberster. That probably will come to Australia. Don't quote me on that, but I don't see why not, because there's not going to be much of a market in China for convertible. Then there's smaller car companies. There's one called the SCO1. They're making this small sports car. It's going to have no screen, no radar, lidar, anything. It's very basic. And I think that's one of the big trends that's going to happen this year. These exciting sports cars. I think GAC's got a coupe. Netta's NETA's got another coupe. So it's all BYD's obviously got the Yangwang U9 massive $1 million supercar. So that's this year's trend. I think the other one is MPVs. People carriers. Xpeng are bringing one out this year. I'm sure NIO will jump on the bandwagon. Then there's a few other brands like Voya have got a big MPV, and there's a few others. So they're expanding out. So they're going bigger to MPVs. They're going smaller to sports cars. And I think one area that I'm really excited about is the development of the micro cars, like the K cars, because we've got the Wuling Mini EV, which is ridiculously popular here, but it's not the safest of cars. People say, "Oh, I really want one of these in Australia. I want one of these in Europe." I'm like, you don't really. Like, it's fun to drive around, but you don't want to crash in it. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys think. Do you think these smaller EVs would be popular where you are? Because they're very popular here. Would they be popular in Australia?
I mean, I'll give my thoughts. I don't think our cities are at the level of the density that we're seeing in lots of Asia now. Maybe in like downtown CBD and certainly in Melbourne as well. But yeah, I think that's probably where they belong. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't want to be driving this from my place in the suburbs around Sydney. There's just too many big cars around. Riz?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I love the whole Japanese K car, little car culture. And in Australia, I was doing a little bit of research the other day, and there's plans now. Hyundai has got some plans for some real mini EVs. I was going to ask you, Elliot, about the BYD Seagull. Whether you're any plans of reviewing it or even seeing it at some of the motor shows, because that's a car that I think could fit in, because we sell a vehicle in Australia called the Kia Picanto. It's a small little hatchback. It's a nice car, but I think last year we sold 6,000 of them. Yeah, this car, like the BYD Seagull, will be sort of a like-for-like type of electric vehicle. And if we can get that for around 20,000, that's how much the Picanto ICE car is. And if we're selling more than 5,000 of them a year, it makes, a small dent in the market. Having more of these sort of cars I think would be great. What are your thoughts?
I 100% am going to review this when it comes out. I think when I went to the factory, I saw this driving around in prototype form, because they just driving around casually around the factory. You know, I think the development in this area is going to be the most important over the next few years, because you know, people like BYD can make a car with no frills, really, apart from guitar strings. But they're not so focused on the voice recognition, the self-driving, the stuff, which I don't know about you guys, but I'm not that interested in the self-driving. It's impressive, but I like driving myself. And that's what BYD focused on. It's like tech that you need, but not the tech that you don't. So I think if they can bring this to the market, and this is definitely built for not only China, but that Southeast Asian market. So if they're building it for that market, it's going to be right-hand drive. So if they're doing it there, they'll bring it to Australia. And knowing BYD, it could very well be there early next year in Australia. So I think this is very exciting, one to watch out for.
I'm seeing this as the Toyota Yaris replacement. It's kind of about the same size, isn't it? That small car.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you get Ford Fiestas in Australia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So something like Ford Fiesta, someone's first car. I think, because people like Ford have given up on small cars.
Yeah.
So someone's got to take up that mantle, and why not BYD?
Correct.
There's a lot of focus on safety, where people talk about, yes, a Wuling Mini isn't the safest car in terms of its price point and everything. But people talk about safety, and safety can mean different things to different people. A small car is not necessarily an unsafe car. It just, if it's designed well and it meets, the requirements of what it takes to launch a car in 2023, I think it will be safer than most of the 10, 15-year-old larger cars driving around. So I think from a safety point of view, these little cars aren't a big deal when it comes to how safe they are on our roads. It would be better if we do have some sort of a, higher sort of density or congestion areas where they can drive around. But having said that, I think these cars will be something to watch out for, because this brings affordability, accessibility to electric vehicles for tens of millions of people globally.
I want to see more ride-sharing stuff and car-sharing stuff, so that you can have cars like this in apartment buildings. You just take it up for the weekend or whatever you need. I also would like to see car sharing for big cars. So if I want to take like my extended family for a road trip, I can hire one for a couple of weeks as opposed to having one all the time in my garage. So, yeah. Some comments for Elliot. Timothy Hand says, "Love you, Elliot." A few fans here, Elliot. It's great.
Love you too, Tim.
Question for you from Gaffer. What is your take on self-driving from the Chinese manufacturers? I guess we kind of touched on that. I've seen amazing demos on YouTube, but is it transferable outside the country?
Oh man, that's a very good question. So first part, the self-driving from Chinese manufacturers, the people who are doing it well, Xpeng, NIO, I'm going to miss out a few, but, it's given what Chinese roads are like, Chinese road conditions are very different from any other road conditions. You've got, bikes, people, scooters, roads are kind of the same as the pavement, the sidewalk. It's very casual kind of road use. And so for these cars to deal with that unpredictability, it is very impressive. But those systems have only been designed for China. So can they be transferred outside? Probably. Have they been designed to be transferred outside? Not really. I don't think so. So these companies are spending millions, billions on developing these systems, but only for a Chinese market. So I don't know what direction they're going to go in. I think one to watch out for again is Geely, because they've teamed up with, I think it's Mobileye, who are, a third party, and they're introducing that on their Zeekr cars, which are coming to Europe, I think late this year. So whether it transfers over, I don't know. But the self-developed ones by the manufacturers, no, I don't think it's transferable yet.
Unless we have the equivalent of full self-driving beta here for Australia. from Chinese manufacturers. Just saying. There's no idea if you're listening, everyone. Question for everyone, I guess. Phil Smith, are there examples of Chinese Chinese EV manufacturers expanding out of China, for example, Thailand? Could this happen in Australia? I don't know. It's pretty expensive to create anything here in Australia. I think it'd be pretty tough. I don't know. Thoughts, gentlemen? Otherwise?
BYD recently started the construction of a right-hand drive electric vehicle plant in Thailand. Thailand has this aspiration of being the Detroit of the East in making vehicles, and a lot of the vehicles that we get, especially some of the larger utes and light trucks, they're sort of made in Thailand, as well as passenger cars as well that come to Australia. So from what I can gather, BYD seems to be pushing ahead. I'm not sure if Nita is one of the more affordable electric vehicle brands out of China, if they have plans. I know they're sending cars to Thailand, so they do have right-hand drive vehicles that are sort of for our audience. They're around 25,000 to 30,000 Australian dollars, a lot of those vehicles. So if they go to Thailand, maybe they'll build plants there, and Thai government wants more investment in EV manufacturing. So yeah, in the coming years, things could happen. Funnily enough, Singapore is going to have a Hyundai electric vehicle plant that will start production next year. So if things can start to head a bit further south, so we're not far from Singapore, then you never know.
Yeah, the swim is closer, I think, from Singapore to Darwin. So, yeah, good point, Riz. Let's take some more comments from the audience. So, P2N, happy to see non-SUVs. We need to discourage SUVs before we overrun by them like the US. Yep, Elliot's got his thumbs up. Doug Leon, I really wish all these small sports EVs can make it to Australia. Yeah, I'm with you, Doug. I'd love to see them. Yep, the Elliot Fig, I reckon mini EVs would be heaps popular as an entry level. Not everyone can afford a Tesla. Yep, very true. And here's a good point I agree with too. RS3 Me says, if the EVs could give us real world range rather than the pretend range, also with like 600 Ks from a charged real world, that would convince me to sell my ICE cars. Now, Elliot, I think that the Chinese use a different range method. It's a bit more inflated than WLTP.
Yes, it's a lot more inflated. It's a bit of a joke, really. You see these adverts and it says 700 kilometers, and you see they used to use NEDC. Now they use something called CLTC, which is a China standard. It's massively overinflated. I don't really know why they use it because it's not real world. But yeah, the range thing is an issue. But there's two new technologies that hopefully are going to overcome that. One is the battery swapping. It's not just NIO, but Geely are doing it with taxis and trucks. And then I think the other one is the ultra fast charging. Like we did a video with GAC, the Ion, and they've got these new 6C batteries, which you can super ultra mega fast charge in about 5 to 10 minutes from 0 to 100%. So the same as a gas car. So I think once those technologies come in, the range thing becomes much less of an issue, and especially for a place as vast as Australia, where you do have these long distances. I think that's going to be a real game changer.
Elliot, you mentioned earlier you've got family. Obviously, you've got a young child. I could hear it before. And we've all got kids. I've got kids. Rahul's got kids. I mean, what's your sweet spot for charging? I mean, I kind of feel like if it's too slow, it's not good. But you don't want it to be too quick either. Otherwise, you can't sort of stretch your legs and all that. What's kind of the sweet spot for you for a road trip?
Oh, around about 45 minutes would be good. So you can get out, toilet break for me, for my son, sort his trousers out when he wets himself. He's 3, by the way, just in case you thought he was like 13. And he, go get a bite to eat, stretch your legs. 45 minutes is fine. I mean, when we did the NIO in the north, and it was 2 hours to charge. That just felt a little bit too long because you're charging twice as frequently as well. That was a bit of a pain. So, about 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair for young kids. I find like 20 minutes is kind of no man's land. Like it's neither here nor there. I think it's got to be really quick or a bit slower. I agree with you.
Yeah. Do you guys have good service stations attached to your chargers, like on the big highways, or are they a bit lousy?
It's a work in progress, Elliot. Let's just say it's getting there. Like, especially New South Wales, the state you were in for fully charged. It's probably the most progressive state, so they are starting to invest in more charging infrastructure, and a lot of them are attached to either a service station or the service stations themselves are actually doing it. So, like Ampol and BP are actually doing it themselves. So I think when you come back next year, hopefully things will have improved.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to actually drive some EVs in Australia next year, especially some of the converted ones. I've never driven one, and I really want to drive one of those converted classics. I just think they're so cool because there's no classic cars here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, give us some notice. I think next year, before you come, we should tee up a collab.
Sounds good
trip with you. Yeah.
Definitely. I think we should try and organize a road trip, Tom.
Yeah, totally.
For Elliot to come visit in Melbourne, driving a converted classic car EV.
Oh, that would be
Love
a killer video.
Love
Totally. We'll get Robert to meet us in Sydney at the end of it.
Oh, he'll love it as well. Even better.
Yeah. Tassie EV, we go. The smart cars are in Australia and they are tiny. Even though they are ICE, the Seagull could be a great replacement option. Plus, there is a lot of small hatchbacks here in Hobart, Tasmania. Question for you from Terence Elliot. When do you think Chinese electric motorbikes and motor scooters will start coming to Australia? Are there other Chinese bikes over there?
Yeah, there are, but mostly being manufactured but not being driven. There's pretty strict regulations on motorbikes in China. So it's, for example, Shanghai, case in point, the plate for a motorbike to drive in the city is 4 times expensive. So it's $40,000 to get a plate to drive a motorbike, which is maybe only worth $10,000. So yeah, they've got to make some changes there for the electric motorbikes, but yeah, they're going to come to Australia in a big way. Companies like NIU, they've got a huge range of bikes. They're expanding massively overseas. And then you've got other ones like Evoque. I don't know if you guys know them. They're based in Beijing and Australia. They've got a new bike coming out. Yeah, I think there's going to be a flood of electric bikes because they're just easier, more affordable. And I think you might even see a flood of bikes from India as well. I've been doing a lot of research recently. And there's some amazing bike companies in India. They've got fast charging networks for like mopeds, electric mopeds, and there's some really fantastic work being done there. So I think it's all going to come, from Asia and come down to Australia, probably within the next year. But you've got some at the show. There were some pretty cool manufacturers. I remember Fons, Savic.
Yep.
You've got a lot of homegrown ones as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. There's a few of them. We certainly had them on the channel. They're really good, actually, locally produced as well, or locally manufactured. So, yeah. Here's a good question from Graham. Do you think Chinese manufacturers will contribute to building charging infrastructure? This could be viewed as investing in the market customer base. And I think that's a great point. That could actually help bring some of the Chinese EVs over if they're also seen as investing in a network like the supercharger network from Tesla. I mean, do a lot of these companies have their in-house charging network? I know NIO obviously has their battery swap tech.
Yes, a lot of them do. If you're a new startup EV brand, you're going to have your own charging network. So Xpeng's got their own network. Xpeng's quite similar to Tesla. You just plug it in and it charges straight away. You don't have to do anything. NIO's the same. They've got their own network, which is pretty extensive. Who else? I think most of them have some sort of charging network. I think GAC as well. Will they do that in Australia? Yes, I think they will, because they want to do what Tesla's done. Basically, they want to replicate that model, because why has Tesla been so successful? They've got their own charging network, which is reliable and easy to use. That's why they've grown so much. So 100% they're going to do that. They'll build networks, probably all around Australia, far out locations within cities. So you will see that. They'll be mad not to. It's a captive audience. And if they want to grow fast in Australia, that's one way to do it. One company that doesn't do it is BYD. They don't build their own network, so don't expect it from them.
Interesting.
I think they do build dreams, though.
Oh no! Yeah,
And
they
dreams,
do build dreams.
And dreams are free. So.
And if you ever forget, it's written on the back of your card in big letters.
Yes. It's building your dreams, not my dreams. Well, collective your, the royal your. Here's a good question from Jerry Can. It's a question with relation to the Chinese grid. I mean, that's always one of the questions about EVs in Australia. How would the grid cope? Is the Chinese grid coping, Elliot?
Yes. Sorry, it's breaking up a bit for me.
Sorry. Yes, I was just saying. In one of the questions about EVs in Australia is, will our grid cope with all these EVs? Question for China: is the Chinese grid coping with all these EVs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a huge push from the government to, green the network. The issue is that there is still a lot of coal power plants, but it's reducing. It's reducing quickly. I think by 2030 there won't be any coal plants, new coal plants. By 2060 they'll be carbon neutral. But knowing China, they'll meet that goal 10 years early. There's a huge amount of renewables being built. At the moment. Saying that, last year there were huge power cuts for these industries up north. Various factors, the Three Gorges Dam I think it was overflowing to dangerous levels, so they had to, I can't remember, switch it off or something. So there's, the grid is reliable, but there's, still issues from, older infrastructure, and they haven't greened enough of it yet. There's still too many coal power plants. So it copes, but it's not always the most green. Okay.
So working towards as well, as we are here in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. It's a journey.
Oh, Elliot, there's so many questions for you. Seriously, we need to get you back another day. I'm going to run through some of the important ones. For example, Doug says, do you speak Mandarin by now? Surely you do. You've been here since what, early 2000s, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do speak a bit of Mandarin. The Neo AI, you've got to speak Chinese to it. But I've got like Mandarin with a British accent, so it doesn't understand me. My Xpeng doesn't understand me either. So it's a little bit frustrating. So I have to ask my wife to help me, just because it doesn't understand my accent. So I've got the same problem as you guys.
Yep. We can relate. That's good. Okay, we might have to wrap up because we've got so many, but we'll definitely get Elliot back on if he's keen. Let's do this one, Carl. Which Chinese manufacturers are leading the charge in recycling tech? Cars that can outlast the batteries and live on. Are there any interesting developments in this space?
Gosh, you know what? Recycling hasn't been actually that widely spoken about yet. I haven't seen any, huge companies who are taking it upon themselves. What's going to happen is someone like BYD is going to integrate that into their manufacturing process. So they're going to set up battery recycling themselves. I can't remember if they've done that already or they're thinking about it. Because we're producing so many batteries here, so many electric cars that within probably 2-3 years we're going to have all these batteries that need to be recycled. And I'm sure the manufacturers like CATL, they'll be developing this as well. So I expect to see BYD and CATL doing this the first, and I think that they'll probably push the technology even further. In terms of developments in that space, I'm not so familiar at the moment because I haven't heard of many stories, but I think we'll see a lot more in the next few years. CATL are very, we'd love to do a video with them, but going into any of these battery factories is impossible. They're like, no, absolutely not. We don't want to share any secrets with anyone. So, it's a dream of ours, but it's not going to happen yet.
Okay. Well, last time I visited the Tesla factory in Vermont, they wouldn't let me film either, so I can see where they're coming from. Yeah. Closely guarded. All right, Elliot, one last question, I promise. This is a good one. Now, obviously, Tesla is a bit of a closed shop with a supercharger network. Until recently, they've opened it up. Are these networks closed to their own brands, or are they open to everyone?
they're open to everyone. Obviously, the benefits if you have your own Neo car and Xpeng car, it's cheaper sometimes, but they're completely open. So the interesting one was the Neo network up north. So it's the only network up north. There's no other chargers. And that's where they do the car testing, the cold weather testing. They all drive up there. And so all these car brands are using Neo chargers to charge their test cars, their prototype cars, which I think is quite interesting. And you go to this town and there's hundreds of cars in camouflage. You're like, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And you're just like snapping away. You're like, oh, what? You just want to know what they are. But yeah, so Neo's network up there is one of the biggest. So, all the EVs use it. So there's no other network is shut off. I think maybe apart from Porsche, the Taycan chargers are just for Taycan. If you spend that much money, then you kind of want exclusivity, right?
Yeah, that's fair. And other things on top of that too, you would think, with that kind of money.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Elliot, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Elliot Richards, everyone, from Fully Charged, East Asia correspondent, living in Shanghai, living the dream, really, seeing all these EVs pop up to 25% uptake for new energy vehicles in China, growing by the day. Again, thank you so much, Elliot, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been really good to talk to you guys and kind of carry on our conversation from Fully Charged Live. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure. And thank you again to Riz and Rahul, our regulars. Thank you, Riz.
No worries. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks everyone for joining. Elliot, thank you for bringing this amazing content. We saw your BYD Yuan Plus or Atto 3 video before we got the cars down here. So it gave thousands of Australians who had put a deposit on one the confidence to say they've done the right thing.
Wow.
And keep bringing the amazing content from there because, we love it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Elliot,
Rahul.
great to have you on the show. Please come back because the audience has really, really enjoyed having you here. They're asking, can we please have Elliot back on a even semi-regular basis? And before we let you go, Elliot, do you just quickly want to share with the audience your Twitter handle and perhaps your YouTube channel so they could follow you through there as well, please? Yeah,
of course. So you can follow me on Twitter at Elliot China. I'm on YouTube at Fully Charged Show, and I've also got my own channel which I upload rarely on, but it's called China Driver. So you can find me on there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Elliot. I'll leave those links in the video description. So definitely follow Elliot on those forms of social media. And Elliot, if you're happy, we're going to have you on. You know that, right? Again,
I'm very happy to do more. I'm really delighted.
Oh,
so
good.
Thank you.
No, thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you watched live, and also if you watched on replay, make sure you leave a comment, show your appreciation to Elliot. And if you listen on podcast today, thanks ever so much for listening this far. So thanks, Elliot. Thank you, Riz. Thanks, Rahul. And until next time, everyone, take care. As always, happy charging. Take care, guys. Bye.